Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Amateur Radio Technician class, session number 16, our final session. Before we get started, I just wanted to announce and also extend condolences on the passing of Kazlur Baksh, well known in the amateur radio world, as well as a member of REACT. And he passed on this morning. Very sadly, we got that news. And he is well known to many of us. And as it were, he happened to have been a mentor of mine and also the person who would have encouraged me to get into amateur radio, at least get an amateur radio license. But he's well known to many, mentor to many reactors and amateur radio operators. So we extend condolences to his family, his friends, colleagues, and certainly members of REACT, where he worked tirelessly over many decades, especially in the technical area and many projects. So again, a sad day for us indeed in the radio fraternity and in REACT. Okay. So during our previous session, we had our usual curriculum look and also discussed the practice exams. Then we got into our technical topics, contesting, grid locators. We discussed radio direction finding, talked about IRLP, voice over IP. We discussed Echolink, what's dual tone multi-frequency or DTMF. Then we discussed gateways. We went on to talk about the FCC Part 97, rules for amateur radio service, then frequency allocations, band plans. We discussed technician privileges. Then we looked at the importance of the transmit frequency selection. Then we got into primary versus secondary users, talked a bit about licensing. Then we ended with prohibited transmissions, and of course, our usual question pool review. So our agenda for this evening. So again, today is our last session in the amateur radio technician class. So we'll begin, of course, with our curriculum progress, see where we are. Then again, we'll remind all participants about the links to the practice exams. Then we'll go into the technical topics for this evening. Control operator, what's a control point? Then we'll get into the definition of remote control. We'll talk about the importance of station identification. We'll also discuss the concept of self-assigned indicators. Then we go into third-party communication. And then we will end, final topic, station records. Right after, we'll go into our usual question pool review. Then we'll discuss the upcoming exams and talk a bit about what's next. Okay, good evening, Adish. Certainly a pleasure to have you. Junior, yes, thanks indeed for your condolences. All right, so let's look at our curricular progress. So we had to go through all of these topics over the last 15 sessions, and today our 16th session, we will finish off the last topic, rules and regulations. So excellent progress indeed, very steady progress. We ran a few sessions a little over time just to make sure that we can finish, and certainly we have, and we say thank you to all for staying the course and having gone through thus far. So one more session today. So here are the links to the practice exams. By now, most of us should have been attempting these practice tests one way or the other so that we can see our readiness for taking the exams. And of course, we have been using the No Nonsense Technician Class License Study Guide throughout the course. There are several other good texts available. And of course, we have some supplementary material as well that you can become familiar with. It does help. So just a brief reminder what we as budding amateur radio operators might be aiming towards. This is an example of an HF station what might be inside of a house and what might be outside of the house. So this is one setup that we could aim towards. Of course, not all of the accessories are shown here. We just have the power supply, equipment, radio, some accessories, and the antenna. And of course, we may also do a mobile installation, operate mobile. We may put some sort of radio inside of a vehicle with an antenna and operate accordingly. Yet another option would be for us to have a handheld device, or what we sometimes will refer to as a walkie-talkie or an HT. Handheld, very convenient, and of course we have the associated drop-in charger that we can use to charge the battery on the radio. So all of these are some possibilities as to what we may be aiming to acquire equipment-wise once we have become licensed amateur radio operators. It's by no means all of it, but just to give an idea as to what we might be looking at. All right, so our first topic, the concept of the control operator. So for the exam, we will need to know what a control operator is. So the control operator is in fact an amateur radio operator who's licensed, and that is the person who looks after the operation of the station at that point in time. So whoever is operating the amateur radio station, the operator is the control operator and has responsibility, in fact, significant or serious responsibility. Anything that happens, transmissions, that person is responsible. So that's the control operator. So this is a pictorial view to talk about the control operator, because there's also the station licensee, and there's another control point that we would like to define. I have exam questions in them. So pictorially, imagine this to be a house, a building, a room, or a shack. We have our radio equipment. So just a simple radio, HF radio is shown here. We've left out all of the accessories and cables and antennas and so on. So just our equipment inside of our station. So this is our transceiver. And then we'll have a person who is going to be operating this equipment at the control point. And that person who is located at the control point that is operating this radio is considered to be the control operator. That's the designation. But notice on the outside here, we have this other person that we're saying is a station licensee. So oftentimes the station licensee is the control operator, but not necessarily so, right? Because as a ham, you can invite another licensed amateur radio operator to utilize your station. So in which case you're the station licensee and normally you are the control operator. But in this case, friend has invited you to use the station. He or she is licensed and can do so without you physically being there. So let me just pick on my good friend Franz in St. Lucia. Let's say I were to take a trip across there and Franz were to invite me to his home and say, Robbie, you're more than welcome to use my station. And he steps out, probably goes to the market, and then I'm in front of the radio and I'm operating. I am not the station licensee, he is, but I am the control operator because I'm using his radio. Of course, I am licensed as well, right? So I'm a licensed operator, so he doesn't have to be here. He's gone, but I'm using his station. So I'm the control operator using his radio equipment, and that's called the control point. So station licensee, control operator, control point. So this is just a pictorial view, and we'll get to the exam questions and the information that we need to learn. Okay. So again, we've repeated this diagram towards the top to remind us ourselves of the difference between station licensee, control operator, control point, and so on. And this is our station, right? So just to remind us. But we need to know that for the exam, that an amateur station may never transmit without a control operator. So once you have your amateur station, of course, we'll come to something else called automatic control and some other things. But generally, once you have an amateur station, there must not be a transmission from this without a control operator, right? So we'll get into some of the variances and so on. But for the exam, this is a test question. An amateur station may never transmit without a control operator. So this is the station here, and this is our control operator that's operating the radio. Maybe he's the person push the torque or press the torque button. Or maybe he's controlling the computer because he's doing a digital mode and that computer is connected to the transceiver. But he is the control operator and must be there once that equipment is transmitting. Okay. Now remember, we talked about the difference between a station licensee and a control operator, but there's an assumption the FCC makes, and that is, unless you document otherwise, we assume that the control operator is in fact the station licensee. So note we said it can be the same person, but it can also be a different person. And by the way, that's why sometimes in amateur radio licenses, you'll see station/operator license or operator/station license, because it's kind of two licenses you're getting in one, in a sense. One is for the station, it's a physical location where you'll be operating primarily, and the other is your individual license as an operator. So that's why you'll see station/operator license or operator/station license on your license. So the FCC assumes or presumes that it's one and the same person, but notice it doesn't have to be. But how do you ensure that if someone else is the control operator other than the station licensee, what do? You have to document it. You have to write it down in the log, and that is documentation. So that's the next exam question. The FCC, Federal Communications Commission, that's the authority, presumes the station licensee to be the control operator of an amateur station, unless documentation to the contrary is in the station records. So if, I'm in St. Lucia and Franz invites me over and I'm operating his equipment and he's gone off to the market, we need to document, we need to have that documented that I am the control operator and not Franz. If I don't do that, then the authority would assume that the owner of the station is also the control operator. Yeah. Okay. So another point that we need to make is the station licensee is the one who must designate the control operator. Makes sense, right? If you own the shack, you own the house, you own the building, you own the property, it's your equipment and all of that, and you are giving someone else the responsibility to be the control operator, you're the one that has to designate them, right? So that's the next bullet point, and it's also an exam question. Remember, anytime we see a bullet point and it's all or most of it is in yellow, that is usually an exam question, verbatim. So the station licensee must designate the station control operator, right? So that's the point that we make. It's the station licensee, the owner, who says, okay, this person, Jane, she is the control operator. Okay. So another bullet point that we need to learn for the exam is that when the control operator is not the station licensee, all right? So I have gone across to St. Lucia. Franz is not at home and he has permitted me to use his station. So I'm the control operator, but I'm not the station licensee. We need to know that both of us are responsible for the proper operation of the station, not because Franz has left, that he's somehow not responsible at all. He does share responsibility with me as the control operator. So that's what this bullet point is trying to tell us. When the control operator is not the station licensee, the control operator and the station licensee are both responsible for the proper operation of the station. So you have the station licensee, you have the control operator, station licensee has stepped away, control operator is right there. Well, both are responsible, okay? So that's why amateur radio, we train, we learn, we do exams, and we have responsibilities. Okay. So here's a question that you might have been asking yourself. If the control operator doesn't have to be the station licensee or vice versa, right? Both amateur radio operators may actually have different classes of call signs. So in the FCC system, remember, we have a couple of different license classes. We talked about technician, which is the course that we're doing at the moment. There's the next level up called the general, and the next level up called the extra or amateur extra class. So those are 3 levels or 3 classes. And what if the station licensee is one class of operator and the control operator is another class of licensee? So let us say we're in the US and I am a technician class operator, say, and I go to the home of an extra class operator. Well, I now am operating that station. Can I use the privileges of the extra class whose home I'm at? The answer is no. I'm a technician and I'm limited to using the privileges that I have. And vice versa. Let's say that I'm an extra class operator and I go to the home of an operator who is a technician class. So he or she has a technician class license, but I am an extra class. Am I limited to using only the technician class privileges of the station owner? The answer is no. I can use all of the privileges that I have as an extra class because the control operator license is what determines the privileges that can be used at the station. All right, so which is the last bullet point. The class of operator license held by the control operator determines the transmitting frequency privileges of an amateur station. So remember, the different classes carry different privileges. So whatever the class of the control operator is, that is what determines the frequency privileges. So if it's an extra class, that operator, even though operating a station that is owned by a technician class, because he or she has an extra class, can operate full privileges. Yeah. So the control operator determines the frequency privileges used at that station. Okay. So we're just trying to show what we just mentioned a little bit visually, right? So you may remember when we were talking about band plans, we excerpted some sections of the band plan and we show that for the 40 meter band, for example, you have privileges between between 7.0 and 7.3 megahertz as an amateur radio operator. But what you can use, what you can transmit on, is determined by a class of license. So you cannot simply just use 7.0 to 7.3 and transmit on it. You have to check your license class. So if I'm an extra class, of course, I have access to the entire part of the band, that sub-band. I can use all of the sub-bands here. That's for the extra class. So remember our little reference here, extra class is E, we have the general class, it's G, and the technician class, it's T. We have 2 grandfathered classes called advanced and novice, so don't get too tied up when you see those. You just can't do exams now to get those classes. They were classes available before, and that's why we say they're grandfathered classes. Still effective, still licensed, they will be renewed as long as those persons hold it, but a new person cannot become an advanced class or a novice class. It's technician, general, and extra. Those are the 3 levels. And that's what you'll see represented here as well. All of these types of licenses and the frequency transmit privileges that you have. So the extra class has pretty much, well, everything. The technician, however, will only be able to use some of the spectrum. And also the technician is limited in this band by the amount of power he or she can transmit. And also the mode. If you remember correctly, this is CW, right? So that's the thing about it. We need to understand, that concept when it comes to the control operator. It's the transmit privileges of the control operator. And even though that technician class operator is at the home of an extra class or a general class, he or she may not use those privileges, at least once they are the control operator. Of course, there's something else. If you have a guest, you have a licensed ham, and you have an unlicensed person or person with a different license, you have to use the call sign of that person with the additional privileges, right? So that's why the control operator is a very clear distinction as to who that is, because that determines the frequency spectrum that you can transmit. All right. So we have an exam question along those lines. Goes as follows. Under no circumstances, at no time, I say again, under normal circumstances, at no time may a technician class licensee be the control operator of a station operating in an amateur extra class band segment. So that is just saying that if The technician class operator is the control operator. He or she cannot transmit in the extra class section of the band that's given by E. Cannot, should not, will not. Please don't. Okay. So yet sticking with the concept of control operator, we have a point in respect of satellite or space station. So of course, if you remember ourselves what satellite or space station is, right? Something 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface, right? It's a repeater in space, for example. You are sending from the Earth, you are transmitting to that CubeSat or you're transmitting to the ISS, and then the repeater on these satellites will send it back down to Earth. So you have an uplink frequency, you have a downlink frequency. So of course, when you are transmitting on the uplink frequency, you have to make sure that you have the privileges for that. And pretty much once you become licensed, you will, because from the technician class, you do in fact have the UHF spectrum or the VHF spectrum. So you will be able, as a technician class operator, to utilize the CubeSats or the International Space Station as a repeater with very modest equipment, as a matter of fact. So we need to know that for the exam, any amateur allowed to transmit on the satellite uplink frequency may be the control operator of a station communicating through an amateur satellite or space station. That's a sort of matter-of-fact statement. It is just telling you, once you can transmit on the uplink frequency, you can be a control operator operating amateur radio through any satellite or space station. Right? So this is an exam question. Let's continue. All right. So we have been talking about control point, local, remote, automatic, also important types of control. So you're not going to be examined fully on all of these bullet points that you have on your screen, but let's take us through some of the definitions so we are aware of the distinction and the nuances between them. So we said that the control point, and we'll come to an exam question shortly, the control point is the location of the control operator. So wherever that control operator is, whether it's at the station itself, or we'll come to see that that control operator doesn't have to be at the station, they can be somewhere else, right? But they have to be at that control point. So the control point is the location of the control operator. Yeah. Then there's local control, remote control, and automatic control. And we'd like to make a distinction between the three. Local control is essentially when the control operator is sitting in front of the radio. Yeah. That person is directly manipulating the station, touching, feeling, or maybe a computer that's connected to it, but it's right there, manipulating directly that station. So that's local control. You are right there. Remote control is when the control operator is away from the radio, but still manipulating the station. So this diagram here shows the control operator at a computer, and that computer may be halfway around the world. This person may be in New York, for example, right? Or this person may be somewhere else other than where the station is, right? So this is the station here. It's connected to the internet via router, and then this person has a laptop that's connected maybe Wi-Fi or through a router and is able to have remote control of their station, and that's becoming more popular, especially with the speeds of the internet available, just the connectivity and the apps that's available on mobile phones, Android devices, Apple iPhones, as well as Windows. You can do remote control of your station. So you have all of this good stuff at home, but you're on the road or you're abroad and you can still operate. And that's called remote control. You are not at the station itself. You're remotely located away from the radio. That's remote control. Then automatic control. Well, you could probably guess what that is. That's where, and that's the exception, where there's no control operator physically present at the station or in a position to directly manipulate. So a good example of an automatic station is a repeater, right? So we show a repeater station here, and that's automatic control. So we have the control point, that's wherever the control operator is located. We have local control, that's where the control operator is sitting right in front of the radio. And then we have remote control, where the operator is connected perhaps via the internet link to their radio, but not directly in front. They can manipulate it, but that remote control. And then automatic control, well, no control operator at all At this location, this may be a tower and a mountain, as we have discussed about repeaters, unattended operation, and that's the repeater. So no control operator. So that's just to give you an idea of the definitions. Let's do a couple more slides before a break. All right, so here are the exam questions related to what we just discussed, right? So the location at which the control operator function is performed is an amateur's station or an amateur station's control point. So we had defined that the other way around in the previous slide, what a control point is. So that again is the location at which the control operator function is performed. So wherever that is the control point. So we need to learn for the exam also what remote control is defined as according to Part 97, which is the amateur radio service rules. Operating the station over the internet is an example of remote control as defined in Part 97. So here we have our control operator at a computer connected to the internet somewhere, could be anywhere around the world once you get internet connection, and you come right back to your router that's interconnected with your radio equipment. So that is remote control, and this is how it's defined in Part 97, which is the rules that we are operating, the guidelines we are operating. Let's continue a little bit again. So a couple more exam questions. The following are required for remote control operation. So what do we need to have in place for remote control operation? So firstly, the control operator must be at the control point. So even though it's remote control, the control operator is still at the control point. So the control point is now here. Remember, the control point is wherever the control operator is. So this is the control point, this computer here, right, doing remote control. Secondly, the control operator is required at all times at that control point. The control operator can't just, step away and so on, right? So, but there's also a third requirement for remote control operation. That is, the control operator must indirectly manipulate the controls. So still in control of the radio, but indirectly through probably a remote session on a PC here or remote control software. All right. So these three bullet points must be met for it to be remote control. Exam question. All right. So repeater operation is an example of automatic control, right? So we showed that in the previous slide. Repeater operation, automatic control. Why? Because there's no control operator there at the control point. It's repeater operation. There's a controller, but it's not a human being. It's automatic control. Okay. All right. So let's just take a break at this time. 2-minute break. Let's get up, take a little stretch, probably a bathroom break, have a glass of water, and we'll come right back in 2 minutes time. All right. So let's tackle a couple of the questions that we have. So Mitchell asks, what call sign would the station use if the station licensee and operator is not the same person? All right. So whoever the control operator is, that's the call sign you'll be using. So of course, at any point in time, they can swap. The owner or the station licensee can become the control operator at that point, as the other control operator steps aside and can use their call sign. So whoever the control operator is the call sign that you use, right? So excellent question, dear Michelle. I hope that answers your question clearly now. So Brown asks about the band plan. So yes, we tend to use, so there's the IARU, International Amateur Radio Union Band Plan Committee, and there's a band plan. The US, in fact, does have a band plan that's published, and it tends to be harmonized as well. So yes, we tend to use that band plan, the IARU band plan, and or the ARL or US band plan. So excellent question indeed. All right, so let's see if we could make a restart. All right. All right. Okay, so welcome back. Let's continue. So as a licensed amateur radio operator, it is important that we identify our station call sign. We need to identify ourselves when we are speaking, when we are transmitting, whether we are using voice or some other mode, such as a digital mode. It is important to identify our call sign. We need to say it, or we need to transmit it using one of the approved methods of indicating our call sign. And we also need to do so periodically. So if my call sign is 9 Yankee for Romeo, when I'm making a call, I need to state the call sign. And while I'm in a conversation, or what is called sometimes a QSO, we are having a discussion on air, I will need to periodically give my call sign. So too does the other amateur radio operator, or any other amateur radio operator that's transmitting at that point will need to make sure that they identify themselves. I need to identify myself. You will need to identify yourself periodically. And that period is every 10 minutes. That's according to the FCC Part 97 rules. At least every 10 minutes you need to identify. So a question people ask, should I identify more often than 10? Well, it could be a little bit overbearing if you're identifying every transmission, but try to ensure that you do not cross 10 at all. Err on the side of caution. If you're not sure, go ahead and identify. It doesn't hurt. But try not to be too burdensome and overly identify as well. That could also be challenging, right? So every 10 minutes, and that's an exam question. You are required to transmit your assigned call sign at least every 10 minutes during and at the end of a communication. So that's an exam question. 10 minutes. All right. Okay. Also, there is an exception to transmitting your call sign. So as amateur radio operators, we do not only communicate with another amateur radio operator via voice or via digital mode. Sometimes we use our amateur radio license to control craft. Yes, you can. So when we do so, let's say we have a remote control model aircraft or model plane or model helicopter or drone or UAV or UAS, whatever you want to call it, some remote control model craft, and you're using an amateur radio frequency, using your license to be able to do that transmission. Well, in that case, you can utilize it without transmitting your call sign on the air. Right? So that's the exception according to the FCC rules. Right? So generally, you need to identify your call sign all the time. Once you're transmitting, you must state it. And then every 10 minutes afterwards, once you are engaged in conversation, and when you have ended, you need to close by also giving your call sign. So that anyone listening to your conversation or observing your QSO, observing your back and forth transmission, can tell who are the amateur radio operators that's speaking or communicating. You cannot do it anonymously. So that's an important part, station identification, using your licensed call sign or the call sign issued to you by the authority. So we have this exception, our model aircraft. So another exam question is when you're identifying your station, when you're giving your call sign, you must use English, and that's an exam question. The language you may use for identification when operating in a phone or voice subband is English, right? So English, right? So you must speak English when you are giving your call sign. All right, let's move on. So we did mention that there are a couple of ways to give your call sign. Voice is not the only way. You can send your call sign using Morse code or CW. That is another way that you can send it. I mean, there are other ways as well that's valid, but for the exam, we need to know that the method of call sign identification that is required for a station transmitting phone. And remember, anytime we say phone in amateur radio, it's voice, right? You're speaking. Transmitting phone signals is to send the call sign using a CW, which is Morse code, or phone, which is voice, meaning that you speak emission, right? So emission simply means transmission, right? So let's think of it that way, right? So this is an exam question. You can give your call sign either via voice or via CW, Morse code. We would have touched on the phonetic alphabet before. So on your screen, on the right-hand side towards the bottom, there's the phonetic alphabet. And we encourage all hams to become familiar with the phonetic alphabet, learn it, so that it becomes second nature, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, etc., all the way to Zulu. Because when we're also giving our call signs, we do use the phonetic alphabet as well. So earlier, I would have given my call sign, I might have said 9 Yankee 4 Romeo. I can also say 9Y4R, but the phonetics are highly encouraged when you are stating your call sign. Most, if not all, amateur radio operators do so natively anyway. So it is encouraged, right, to use the phonetics when you're giving your call sign. 9 Yankee 4 Romeo. That means 9Y4R. That's my call sign. So that's the subject of the next exam question. Bullet point says, the FCC rules regarding the use of phonetic alphabet. I say again, the FCC rules regarding the use of the phonetic alphabet for station identification in the amateur radio service state that it is encouraged. So they're encouraging you to use the phonetics when you are stating your call sign. All right. So you may wonder, do we have to use only our licensed call sign, the call sign that we get when we get our amateur radio license on the air? Can we use something else? Can we use a nickname of sorts? Well, yes, there is the concept of a tactical call sign. Now, what a tactical call sign is a call sign that could represent the function that you're performing or the location that you are at. So for instance, if you're operating at the Queen's Park Savannah and your purpose there is the control point, you are the operator that is conducting all of the traffic, you're the message handler, and let's say my call sign is 9 Yankee 4 Romeo. So I will identify as 9 Yankee 4 Romeo. Yes, I must do so on the air. But when I'm communicating with, let's say, all of the other operators, so let's say this is a React project, for instance, and we're operating at the Queen's Park Savannah, and we have the control station that's located in the grandstand. And my call sign, I'm, let's say, the control operator, and I'm 9 Yankee 4 Romeo. And I'm calling someone in a band, let's say Tribe. I'm calling Tribe. Do I have to say 9 Yankee 4 Papa, this is 9 Yankee 4 Romeo all the time? Well, you have to do that at some point in time. Remember, every 10 minutes, you must identify your call sign. But between that, you can use another call sign fit for purpose and that is called a tactical call sign. So for instance, the tactical call sign for the station that's located in the grandstand in the Queen's Park Savannah could be Savannah Control. That's a tactical call sign. And the operator that's located in the band tribe, that might be 9 Yankee for Papa, but he may use the call sign tribe or tribe 1 or something like that. So as the control operator, I can say tribe 1 control, right? And we can have a conversation legitimately because we are using tactical call signs. And notice we say a tactical call sign is a call sign that can represent your function, so Savannah Control, or location. So for example, location at the port, so port 1, for example, or probably at Socadrome. So I'm located at Socadrome, so I'm calling in my call sign as Socadrome. But the point is, I do, as an amateur radio operator, licensed, I do need every 10 minutes or so to give my proper, official, or FCC assigned call sign every 10 minutes. Though I can legitimately use a tactical call sign. And that's the subject of the last bullet point and an exam question. You must identify with your FCC assigned call sign when using tactical call signs such as race headquarters at the end of each communication and every 10 minutes during a communication. So pretty much the same thing as identifying yourself anyway, except that in such a case, you can use the tactical call sign in between, right? Just make sure every 10 minutes or so or less that you give your call sign. So that's tactical call sign. So we now come to something called self-assigned indicators. What is a self-assigned indicator? Well, for instance, my call sign might be 9 Yankee for Romeo. But if I'm using a mode called D-Star, and we had introduced D-Star as a mode earlier in the course, and I'm using a radio, programming it for D-Star, and I want to, or I can, in fact, program into that radio my call sign. So I may put 9 Yankee for Romeo in the my call part of the call sign or the entry into the radio. But there's a slash and I could put a couple of letters afterwards. So I may choose to put Robbie, or I may choose to put my location POS, Port of Spain, or I may choose to put the model radio that I'm using. So I may put 2820H or something like that. So that indicator, really a suffix, after this slash or slant or stroke, that is an indicator, and I can self-assign. Now, there are some rules about self-assigning. So you cannot self-assign one that conflicts with something else, like another country or even within the US where you may be. So there are some restrictions on that indicator. Having said that, though, you can have a standard suffix or you can self-assign an indicator. That is permitted according to the Part 97 rules. And we've put it here because this can be somewhat controversial topic. Recently saw a bit of a debate on this. So we always like to look at the official rules, regulations, legislation regarding what it says. So the laws, what's on the books. So the FCC Part 97, which is the Amateur Radio Service Rules. This section here talks about the use of a self-assigned indicator, right? But for the exam, you will get a question, and we said that the call sign is followed by a slant or a stroke or a slash, and then whatever the indicator is or whatever the suffix is. So you will in fact get a question in the exam, or potentially get a question that asks about self-assigned indicators and which one of them are acceptable. So in that particular question, all of them are acceptable because they have shown you the call sign along with the self-assigned indicator. And of course, the separator is this slash or slant or stroke, and you can verbalize it as either of the three. So the exam question is as follows. The following self-assigned indicators are acceptable when using a phone transmission. So all of these choices are correct. So the call sign in the exam is Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie, KL7CC, with a stroke and W3 or Whiskey 3. You can also say the same thing as Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie slant Whiskey 3. You can also say it as Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie slash Whiskey 3. So the stroke, slant, and slash are all correct. And of course, that part at the end is the self-assigned indicator, you know. All right, let's move on. Third-party communication is when you are sending messages on behalf of someone else. So on your left-hand side, we have an operator, control operator located in the United States. So that's the map of the US in the back here. Right, so control operator is at the station. He's a local operator or local control, and he's a control operator. Now, there's another person who is also in the US, maybe a neighbor that just stopped by, but this person is a non-licensed person, but would like to send a message to another radio operator that's located maybe somewhere in Germany or somewhere in the UK, for instance, right? So another country, overseas, right? A foreign station. And that is possible. This non-licensed person wanting a licensed person to pass a message on their behalf to another licensed person, right, or licensed station. That is in fact permitted, and that is considered to be third-party communications. But sometimes, or some places, it can be restricted or prohibited, right? But this is the concept of third-party communication. You have a non-licensed person, they're passing a message to the licensed person to pass on their behalf to another licensed amateur radio operator, right? So we do have an exam question and the definition of third-party communications. Third-party communications definition is a message from a control operator to another amateur station control operator on behalf of another person. So that's third-party communications, right? So we've shown it where the two control operators are located in different countries, but they can in fact be located in the same country. But why we use this is because the other bullet point talks about some restrictions, right? That's possible. So note that the control operators can in fact be in the same country and for it to be considered third-party communications, right? So this operator could have easily been in another state or even in the same state in the US, right? But we're using one diagram to illustrate multiple bullet points. So that's the subject of the next bullet point. The following restriction apply when a non-licensed person, there's this person here, non-licensed, is allowed to speak to a foreign station using a station under the control of a licensed amateur operator. And that's permitted, by the way. So we have this control operator, licensed ham, and there's this non-licensed person. Maybe this non-licensed person is in fact studying to become a licensed person, or maybe not. But they would like to speak to another amateur radio station, and that could be within the US. But in our case here, the scenario we are painting is where this other licensed amateur radio operator is in another country, a foreign country, right? So to do that legitimately, to pass third-party traffic, there must be some sort of agreement called a third-party agreement. So that's what this symbol here means. That means these two countries, let's say Germany or somewhere, and the United States, they have a third-party agreement that allows for such transmissions to occur. For the control operator here in the US to allow this amateur radio operator to pass third-party traffic to this foreign station. So that's the exam question. The following restrictions apply when a non-licensed person is allowed to speak to a foreign station, that's a foreign station here, using a station under the control of a licensed amateur operator. That's the licensed amateur operator here. For that to occur, the foreign station must be in a country with which the US has a third-party agreement. So this little symbol here, you have two people, a contract is being signed. That's the third-party agreement between the United States and this other country or foreign country. For that to occur, you must have a third-party agreement. And this is an exam question. So believe it or not, we have actually come to the last slide in the course. I mean, we have a couple more slides to deliver, but in terms of the content of the technician class syllabus, this is our last slide, folks. And it speaks to station records. So we have an operator located in their shack, they're operating, and in the middle of your screen, this is an example of what an amateur radio log looks like. Now, of course, there are other formats as well, but this is, you'll see the date, the time, the frequency, the mode, the power levels, transmit power, the call sign of the station that you're communicating with, as well as the report, send, receive report, signal, and of course, any remarks. And of course, this log sheet has a nice little section here for notes. So there's a row every time you speak to another amateur radio operator, or every time you make that communication, you log the contact. That's an example of what you will keep in an amateur radio station log. The other things that you will keep as records. All right. So we need to learn this for the exam, that your station, as well as its records, must be available for the authority, that's the FCC, to inspect it at any time upon request by an FCC representative. So that's an exam question. Your logs and your station subject to examination by the FCC, right? So that's the exam question. The station and its records must be available for FCC inspection at any time upon request by an FCC representative. So folks, we have completed our syllabus. But we have a couple more slides. This is our trusty slide that we have been running for several sessions. Hopefully it's a good reference to know where it's HF, VHF, UHF, what part of the HF, what part do we use, lower sideband, upper sideband, where's the FM broadcast band in relation to all of the spectrum we have as amateur radio operators, how, when we talk about the 20-meter band, what frequency it is. Of course, we have our trusty formula to convert between wavelength and frequency. It very much helps. Remember, we can divide whatever by 300 and we get an answer, and it helps us work this back. All right, so hopefully all of this is useful. I suggest you print it, keep a copy of it in your shack. No, you will not be able to take it with you in the exam. So let's go now to our question pool, where we'll review the questions in the question pool that matches the theory that we dealt with in this evening's final session. Okay. There we go. All right. So we will move very quickly through these questions, seeing that we just covered all of the theory in relation to them. Right, first up, when may an amateur station transmit without a control operator? The answer is never. Who does the FCC presume to be the control operator of an amateur station, unless documentation to the contrary is in the station's records? So it is assumed that the station licensee is the control operator. If it's otherwise, it needs to be documented. Next question in the question pool. Who must designate the station control operator? Well, it's the station licensee. When the control operator is not the station licensee, who is responsible for the proper operation of the station? Well, both of them, the control operator and the station licensee, have responsibility. All right. Who is accountable if a repeater inadvertently retransmits communication that violates the FCC rules? Well, it's the control operator of the originating station is responsible. What determines the transmitting frequency privileges of an amateur station? So remember we said that it's the control operator that determines the frequency privileges. So the class of the operator license held by the control operator, not the station licensee. When under normal circumstances may a technician class licensee be the control operator of a station operating in an amateur extra class band segment? Well, at no time. So a technician class operator maybe thinks, well, okay, I'm using an extra class station. I can go extra class. No. You're a technician class and you're the control operator and you need to be limited by your license class. All right. That's an incentive, by the way, to upgrade, you know? Okay, next question in the question pool. Who may be the control operator of a station communicating through an amateur satellite or space station? Well, any amateur that's allowed to transmit on the satellite uplink frequency, which will be pretty much all. Because once you get your technician class, you have VHF and UHF, right? So whether it's UV or VU modes, yes, you can. Very exciting part of the amateur radio operation, satellite. You'd be surprised how very little equipment that you need to communicate satellite. Next question, what is an amateur station's control point? It is the location at which the control operator function is performed. Next question, which of the following is an example of remote control as defined in Part 97? So an example of remote control is operating a station over the internet. Which of the following are required for remote control operation? So all of these that we have here, A, B, C, D, all of these are correct. The control operator must be at the control point. A control operator is required at all times. And the control operator must indirectly manipulate the controls. That's for remote control operation. So that's why all these choices are correct. Next up, which of the following is an example of automatic control? So we said a repeater operation is an example of automatic control. There's no control operator, at least human. All right. Next question. When are you required to transmit your assigned call sign? Just dealt with that. At least every 10 minutes during and at the end of a communication. Right? So it's not 15 minutes or at least once or at the beginning and then, you know, it's at least every 10 minutes during and at the end of the communication. So don't let the distractor answers tie you up. Next one. When may an amateur station transmit without identifying on the air? So there's an exception, or there is a case where you don't have to identify, and that's when transmitting signals to control model aircraft. All right. Yes, you can. All right. What language may you use for identification when operating in a phone subband? You must use English. It's not any language. It's not English, French, Spanish. It's English. What method of call sign identification is required for a station transmitting phone signals? Remember we said anytime in amateur radio we hear phone, that's voice, speaking. So you can send the call sign using either a CW or Morse code or a phone emission. Phone meaning voice. You can say your call sign, speak it. What do the FCC rules state regarding the use of a phonetic alphabet for station identification in the amateur radio service? Well, it is simply encouraged, right? Use of the phonetic alphabets when you are stating your call sign. I am 9 Yankee for Romeo, for example. All right. How often must you identify with your FCC assigned call sign when using a tactical call sign, such as race headquarters? Again, as before, it's at the end of each communication and every 10 minutes during a communication. That's how you identify. All right. Next up. So this is, which of the following self-assigned indicators are acceptable when using a phone transmission? So let's dissect this question. So they're giving you some call signs, right, with indicators. So they want to know which of these are acceptable, meaning permitted or normal or legal when you're using a phone transmission, meaning that you're speaking or voice. Well, all these three are correct. So you're saying Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie stroke whiskey 3, or you're saying Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie slant whiskey 3. And the third iteration is you're saying Kilo Lima 7 Charlie Charlie slash whiskey 3. So that's the difference between these three here. You can say that symbol that looks like a slash. Well, you can call it a stroke, you could call it a slant, you could call it a slash. All right. What is the definition of a third-party communication? So we said it's a message from a control operator to another amateur station control operator on behalf of another person. That's the definition of a third-party communication. Which of the following restrictions apply when a non-licensed person is allowed to speak to a foreign station using a station under the control of a licensed amateur operator? So let's dissect this a little bit. What are they asking us? They're asking about a restriction, or conditions. When what? Non-licensed person, so that's a person who does not have an amateur radio license, right? No, not a ham. And they're allowed to speak to a foreign station, but using a station under the control of a licensed amateur operator. So there's a control operator, and this non-licensed person goes to them and would like to speak to another amateur radio operator in another country, and that's allowed. That's generally allowed. But it must be that the foreign station is in a country that the US has a third-party agreement. So let's deal with the last question in the question pool. When must the station and its records be available for FCC inspection? The answer is at any time upon request by an FCC representative, right? So they can come and ask you for records, they can come and ask to see your station. So folks, that's it for the question pool. We do have a couple more slides to go through, so we're not just over yet. So let's get to it. All right. So we were just dealing with pages 115 to 120 in the No Nonsense Technician Class License Study Guide. All right, so just a reminder that all of the recordings, including today's, once we are successfully completed, is posted to this link, as well as all of the documents that we have sent out, whether it's the PDF copies of the Part 97 or Jack Tilley's lovely document, or the document that we've been using, the text that we've been using, the No Nonsense Guide, all of those things, plus all of the slide decks, all of your slides that you've received through the course are stored or kept, these links, right? So this is the document repository, and this is the video recording repository. So http://tdocs.ttreact.com. So it doesn't say HTTPS, folks. This is just a redirection. It will take you to a secure site. And of course, http://tvids.ttreact.com. Again, HTTP, it will take you to YouTube, which is secure under HTTPS, right? So these are just redirection URLs or uniform resource locators or links. And you can find all of the documents sent out, as well as all of the videos for review. If you missed any, you can have a look at it. If something would like to review again, feel free to play it back. So it's all on YouTube. You can feel free to subscribe to the channel if you wish. And this is a playlist, so you don't have to go looking for all of the videos. So just a reminder, so we're just going to go through, rehash a couple of slides that we had in the first session, and we highly recommend to students, please look over session number 1. It has a lot more information on becoming a licensed amateur radio operator, but we will replay some of these slides here for your convenience. So just a reminder, in the system that we're doing, which is the American exams, the SEC, you have 3 levels: technician, general, extra, and we're currently doing technician. You have about 400, it's actually I think 412 or 413 questions, of which you will get 35 in the exam, right? And of course, we have the information here for you for the other levels. Of course, this call sign here, you would get a 903, a 903 call sign, right? So let's bear that in mind when you become licensed in Trinidad and Tobago. And bottom here, this is what your Trinidad and Tobago license might look like. Okay. So again, these are slides repeated from the session number 1. So just quickly, it's multiple choice, the exams when you're doing it. Those of you who have already taken the practice exams, highly recommended. It's coming from a question pool, so there are no unseen questions. And of course, the question pool that we're using is valid from 2022 to 2026 because it expires every 4 years. And of course, just bear in mind when you go to do the exam, you can do all 3 levels, technician, general, and extra, for the same fee. That is an option available to you. So let the volunteer examiners know this. And once you've passed, you will get a CSCE, which is this wonderful document. It's called the Certificate of Successful Completion of Examination. Right. Of course, the exams are conducted by volunteer examiners. Right. They have really been doing human service, good work. And of course, we do have in-person exams, and we also have the option for remote exams. Those are available. The typical cost to take exams that's payable to the volunteer examiners would be $15 or so. I think the TT equivalent is $105. And of course, once you have passed, you have gotten your CSCE, and the volunteer examiners have sent it in to the VC, and the VC sent it in to the FCC, you will get an email prompting you to pay your $35, right? So we'll come to a bit more information about that in a little bit, but these are slides from the session number 1. So again, you are doing the technician class course, and the matching exam is the technician class or element 2 exam. You have 35 questions that you will get out of a pool of 400. It's about 412, 413 questions, I think. You must get 26 correct to pass. That's 75%. It's doable because there are no unseen questions. All of the questions, we have covered every single question during this course, folks. Yes. So nothing should come as a surprise to you. It's all well-known questions in the question pool. All right. So we also recommend highly take the practice exams. That will check your readiness to see whether you're good to go or maybe you need a little more review. Right? It'll help you with your confidence. Right. Some recommendation, please. So you study the syllabus. This is how you do it. You take practice exams as we've been recommending. Once the exams are scheduled, you take the exam. Remember, before you go to the exam, you need to have your FRN. And this is the link to get your FRN. You sit the exam, you will need a US address and also an email address. You'll get your CSE. In the US, you'll get a 10-year license. Remember, you have to pay $35. And of course, to renew, you'll also have to pay $35. The Vs will submit your application to the VC, to the FCC, and of course, they will send you an email once they've processed it, and you have 5 days to respond. So please continue to check your email regularly. We have had some issues with that during the course. Some participants check their email once every week or so. That may not be sufficient. You want to be checking every couple of days, maybe every day if you can. Highly encourage. You don't want to miss that email. So I think it's just valid, that link, for 5 days. Of course, persons in Trinidad and Tobago, you apply through TAT, that's the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, located in Barataria. That's the same place where the in-person exam is coming up. and you'll get a 10-year license once approved. So there's an application fee of $20 plus every year you pay $180. Right? Good deal given the kind of spectrum and facility and license to experiment that you have worked very hard for. So just note that it could take a couple of months in terms of processing from the time you have submitted, right? So have a little bit of patience. Do follow up with them, but please have some patience as well. It can take a little time. Of course, we're not able to give specifics for other countries, other territories. You may have your own procedures. Please check with your National Telecom Authority for any further details, exams in your area. Of course, you're always free to do the US exams. You can do it remotely. We'll have the link in a little bit to get to some of those remote exams. Whether it's valid for your country to get a local license, that unfortunately we will not be able to indicate. We have several persons from many countries, especially around the Caribbean. We're not able to give very specific information. So just contact your, sometimes called the NTRC, and they will be able to guide you better. Right, so we do have exams coming up, and I'd like to say thanks to the VEs. I mean, they really do human service. Thanks to the lead VE liaison, which will be Clayton. They did indicate that they will look to schedule in-person exams to time with not too long after we have completed this course, and they have kept their promise. So we're able to indicate to you the upcoming local in-person exam in Trinidad and Tobago is on Saturday, the 19th of August. It's at 10 o'clock at TAT. Note, however, there's a deadline to register. There's a form. The link to that form is below. So you don't have to write this out or try to type it out now. When we send you the exchange has been circulated already, but once we send you this, the slide deck, you will have the link here to the exam. Bear in mind, the Monday before the exam is the deadline. So 14th is the deadline to register. The 19th is the actual exam. That's in August, next month. So please, 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 please read and follow all of the instructions that's contained in the registration form. We have excerpted some of it for you, but please pay attention to the actual online form. Don't want to be disappointed. There are a couple of things that are specified in there that you have to adhere to as closely as possible. Certainly, you need to work with your FRN. All right. So you don't want to be disappointed if you don't. Okay. All right. So this we have just pasted this from the VE notification, the actual registration form. This you will find something very similar to this in that registration link. We've just accepted it and put it here for you. Please get your FRN in advance, and this is the link to get it. You need to use a US mailing address and a US email address. Please make sure it's functional. Try your best to keep it not filled, right? Because if email bounces, there can be a challenge in getting it back, right? So try to avoid that. Of course, the VEs, the exam fee is $105 TT. Again, with that, you can do the technician. Once you pass, you can do the general, and once you pass that, you can do the extra, especially if you're prepared for it. Of course, the FCC fees are now $65 US. Once you pass, the VEs will submit to the VEC, Volunteer Exam Coordinator, which is the RL. They will send it to the FCC, and within a couple of days, you will get an email to your mailbox congratulating you, yes, but asking you to pay that $35 US. So please don't miss this email, right? Pay attention, all right, as far as possible, right? So this is paid directly to the FCC, all right? Note here about you having 5 days to reply to the FCC to pay to get your license, and of course, a couple of links. All right, so many persons have been interested in remote exams. So if you need it, this is the link that we'd recommend that you can filter through, also in-person exams in US and other places, but it's very handy to get remote exams or remotely proctored exams. So you can have a look at it here, hamstudy.org/sessions. We do recommend looking for the ARL Vs. But of course, any V is fine. But again, we do recommend choosing the ARRL volunteer examiners. Of course, all of we shared in terms of the getting your license in your local territory. Fortunately, we're not able to provide much information. You would need to contact your local authority. Of course, feel free to give us feedback. Contact us, let us know what you have found, so it can benefit students in the future from these various territories. Here's the contact information. There's my email address, robbie@9y4r.com, and mobile number 1-868-682-2212. Good for WhatsApp. Feel free to communicate. All right. So I'd like to say thanks very much to everyone for your participation. We have had just about 500 students, which is the largest class we have had since we've been doing these classes, right, last couple of years. So thank you so much. I would like to wish you good luck in your exams. We know you will get through. We urge you, once you become licensed, please become responsible radio operators. That's the idea. Again, we had the contact information, previous slide, stay in touch. And of course, we're asking you to be safe. Before we end, I just want to mention also that we will be sending out email messages over the next couple of days. One will be in relation to certificate of participation. So we did offer to all participants certificate of participation. So we'll send you the details in terms of receiving your certificate of participation. Essentially, we'll ask you to just fill a form with the spelling of your name or how you would like it to appear on your certificate. Many persons would prefer something modified compared to their full legal names. That is fine as well. If you have an amateur radio call sign already, feel free to put it, and we'll be happy to put that in your on your certificate of participation as well. So further details will be coming in an email. Also, we will be announcing the upcoming general class amateur radio course. The last one that we have online has expired in June of this year. So we are running it again. So many persons here may be interested, and the email will contain the registration form. Feel free to share it to anyone that's interested as well. So folks, thank you so very much. It's been a blast. It's been really fun, and looking forward to keeping in touch with you. And again, looking forward to you becoming licensed, looking forward to us communicating on the airwaves at some point in time. Have a good night, everyone. Be safe and take good care.